Welcome to View from the Markets. I'm Aline Van Dyne, the FT's US Markets Editor, and today I'm joined by Professor Nouriel Roubini, Professor at New York University and also Chairman of RGE Monitor. Welcome.
Pleasure being with you.
We're close to the end of 2008. What's in store for 2009?
In brief, what I call global stagflation is going to be a year of economic stagnation and recession for most of the global economy with deflationary pressures. This is going to be the worst US recession in the last 50 years. This point is not just the US, it's Eurozone, it's UK, the rest of Europe, Canada, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. Almost all of the advanced economies will have a severe recession. And at this point, there's also a very sharp slowdown of growth in emerging market economies. I expect a hard landing in emerging markets, recession in Russia, and a recession in Brazil, a very sharp slowdown of growth in India and China. And for China to fall from a growth rate of 12 to one of 5 to 6% is equivalent of a hard landing, given that they have to move, 12 million poor rural farmers to the modern urban sector every year with a growth rate of 10%. So I expect a global recession, and a severe one.
Do you think this will persist mainly into next year, or how long do you think this situation will persist?
It will depend very much on how aggressive and effective the policy actions are, monetary, fiscal, recapitalizing financial institutions in US and abroad. There is still a risk of something that is going to be like Japan in the 90s, an L-shaped recession rather than a U-shaped recession. Meaning if we don't fix the financial system, the economic recovery in US and abroad could be so weak, say growth well below potential in 2010-11, there's going to feel like a recession even if we're technically out of a recession. I still put a low probability to the L-shaped Japanese-style depression or recession continuing for a number of years, but would not rule it out.
So you think next year will probably be the worst year in terms of what's most likely?
Yes. I see a recession throughout 2009 in the United States and most of the advanced economies, and maybe there'll be a return to positive economic growth by 2010.
And what policy actions do you think need to be taken that haven't been taken yet? Because of course in recent months policy actions around the world have been very aggressive already. Central banks have stepped in to become lenders to the banking system, but also to the broader financial system. In many cases they're the only lenders that are around. Interest rates have been cut very dramatically around the world. What other policy actions do you think need to be taken?
Well, in part of the answer is the degree of these policy actions. For example, in the US, monetary policy right now is very aggressive, zero interest rates, quantitative easings. The new administration will have a massive fiscal stimulus. But for example, take the Eurozone. I believe the ECB is behind the curve. They're cutting too little, too late. The fiscal response within the Eurozone is also too weak compared to what should be. So
Europe needs to follow the US more at the moment?
Yeah, much more aggressive policy response, I would say. So it's a question of degree rather than what you have to do. But also on top of everything else, I think that we have to recapitalize financial institutions much faster, more aggressively in the US. We'll also need a plan to reduce the debt burden of households that are now distressed and bankrupt. If to reduce the face value of the debt, just low modification is not going to be enough. So a combination of very aggressive monetary easing, recapitalizing the banks, trying to avoid a more severe credit crunch, fiscal stimulus, and debt reduction for those who are insolvent agents in the economy.
So it's going to cost the taxpayer a lot more than it has cost them so far?
Yeah, the fiscal deficit in the US is going to be huge, at least $1 trillion in 2010, another $1 trillion in 2011. In the short run, there is no choice because the alternative is a more severe recession. Hopefully, you can get fiscal discipline over the medium term. Of course, there's a question mark of whether the rest of the world is going to be willing to finance at which interest rates and which value of the dollar $1 trillion fiscal deficits for the next 2 years. That's going to be a potential risk.